Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to cut right through all the noise and take the guesswork out of investing. Seriously, we are going to build a personalized investment portfolio right from scratch using a really clear step-by-step framework.
Okay, let's just get real for a second. For so many of us, investing feels, well, totally chaotic, right? You're hearing about stocks, crypto, this hot new thing, and it's almost impossible to know where to even start. It can feel like you're just throwing darts at a wall, just hoping something, anything sticks. But what if there was a way to turn all that chaos into real clarity?
Well, there is, and it's called asset allocation. Honestly, this is the single most important idea we're going to talk about today. The best way to think about it is like a master recipe for your money. See, it's not about trying to pick one magical stock. It's about deciding how much of each core ingredient, stocks, bonds, and a few others, you need to combine to make the perfect dish for your financial goals. And here's exactly how we're going to do it. First, we'll talk about the master recipe itself. Then we'll get to know the core ingredients. After that, we'll figure out your personal mix. Then we'll actually build a custom portfolio. And finally, we'll cover how to stay disciplined for the long run. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the master recipe. The whole point here is to stop guessing and start using a proven framework that successful investors have used for decades. It's all about understanding the philosophy behind this before we even think about picking a single investment. And that leads us perfectly into Section 2, understanding your core ingredients. Every great recipe is built on just a few key components, and a portfolio is exactly the same. So let's go ahead and open up the financial pantry and see what we're working with. It really just boils down to 4 main categories. First, you've got equities or stocks. That's your engine for growth. Then you have bonds, which are there for stability and income. Then we have alternatives, things like real estate or gold, which give us diversification. And finally, good old cash, which is all about safety and having money ready to go when you need it. And this is just a fantastic way to think about the most important relationship in any portfolio. Equities, or stocks, are the spice in your recipe. They add all the excitement, the growth, but, too much can make the whole thing way too risky. Bonds, on the other hand, are like the salt. They provide stability, they enhance everything, but a dish with only salt, incredibly boring. The real magic is in finding that perfect balance between the two. Which brings us right to our third section, finding your personal mix. Because, and this is so important, the best portfolio is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all thing. The perfect recipe for you depends completely on your personal situation and what you're trying to accomplish. And to figure that out, you really only need to ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, what's your time horizon? How long until you actually need this money? Second, what's your risk tolerance? How do you really feel when the market goes on a roller coaster ride? And third, what are your goals? What are you actually investing for? So let's make this real. Imagine you're 26. You have a huge goal, like hitting $1 million by the time you're 30, but you also need some cash for a house down payment. Well, answering those 3 questions tells you exactly what you need. It means you need an aggressive strategy for that high growth, but you also have to keep some liquidity, some cash, on the side for those shorter-term goals. See how that works? It creates a clear plan. Okay, now for the really fun part. Section 4, building your custom portfolio. We understand the ingredients. We figured out our personal tastes. Now it is time to actually write the recipe. So here are 3 classic starting points, and it all comes down to how much risk you're comfortable with. A conservative portfolio might have only, say, 30% in stocks. A balanced one is right in the middle, around 60%. And an aggressive portfolio, which is for people with a long time horizon and a high tolerance for risk, could be 80% or even more in stocks. You can see how that main spice ingredient, the stocks, changes everything. And here's a really key takeaway from all this. For most younger investors, people who have decades for their money to grow, a balanced to aggressive profile is usually the best place to start. It just gives you the best chance to maximize that long-term growth. But hang on, it's not enough to just say 80% stocks. We also have to diversify within that stock allocation. This is that whole don't put all your eggs in one basket idea. A really solid mix will have exposure to the US, but also other developed international markets and emerging markets, so you can capture growth from all over the globe. And here it is, the whole thing put together. This table shows you what a sample aggressive growth portfolio could look like for our 26-year-old example. You can see the exact target percentages, 65% in equities, 15% in bonds for a little stability, another 15% in alternatives like real estate, and that all-important 5% in cash. The slide even lists some example ETFs. You can just think of those as pre-made baskets of investments that make it super easy to buy everything. This is it. This is the finished recipe.
All right, we've made it to our final section, and you could argue this is the most important one of all: staying disciplined and consistent. I mean, building the portfolio is one thing, but managing it so it's successful over the long haul, that's the real challenge.
And the key discipline here is something called rebalancing. Look, over time, some of your investments are going to grow faster than others, and that's going to knock your recipe out of balance. Rebalancing is just the simple act of, maybe once a year, selling a little bit of what's done really well and buying a little more of what's lagged behind. It forces you to automatically buy low and sell high. It's brilliant.
So what's your action plan? What do you do next? It's this simple. 1. Open the right kind of account. 2. Choose a low-cost platform. 3. Pick simple, low-cost ETFs that match your recipe. 4. And this is critical, automate your contributions so it happens without you thinking about it. And 5. Set a reminder on your calendar to review and rebalance once a year. That is the whole game plan. And what all this means is that you are no longer guessing. You're done with that. By following this framework, you have turned confusion into real confidence. You now know exactly why you own each piece of your portfolio, you know how much of it you should own, and you know when you need to make adjustments. You are in complete control.
So, the master recipe is written down. The ingredients are all laid out, and you know exactly how to combine them. The only question left is, are you ready to start cooking?